So these are the top four lies in the documentary Shamed, which is about me, Jason Nassr. This documentary is riddled and based on absolute fabrication. And they put it in the context of wanting to tell a story about the truth. And that's the only reason that they had me partially participate in the film, that this was supposed to be about the truth. And in fact, it's basically the furthest thing from the truth. Here's the top four lies in this film. That I am exposed as some kind of hunter of women and that I posted revenge porn. This has already been addressed on this channel. There is a separate video. Go watch it. It is absolutely false. What the filmmakers do in this film, in this documentary, this supposed documentary, is that they hide evidence of this female adult model that I worked with in the past, 10 years before this documentary. What they do is hide the facts and intentionally not disclose that this woman signed a release. But none of the images that were ever released of her by the company that owns these images, none of them were in the context of an intimate relationship. None of them are classified as revenge porn. But they won't say that in the documentary. Number three, Jane Sims purportedly, I don't know for sure. I mean, I had a problem locating this in the copy of the film that I have, which is just an audio version of the film. So the audio that I've heard of the film, I can't see that Jane Sims, who's a reporter for the London Free Press, a despicable reporter, she, in her supporting pedophiles, suggests that there's no proof any Creeper Hunter TV men ever acted on pedophilic impulses. This comes from an interview the filmmakers did with a magazine, some kind of magazine called POV magazine. Jane Sims sat through pretty much the whole 4-week trial. She sat her fat ass in the pew at the courthouse and she watched and she talked with her buddy, the Crown Attorney, during the breaks, and she laughed with him. In her watching this, she watched hundreds of text messages that grown adults sent to what they believed to be 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, explicit in nature. People that wanted to go and basically defile children. She sat through that. And then the message that this magazine gives us from her appearance in the film is that no proof that no Creeper Hunter men ever acted upon their pedophilic impulses. Yet, I don't know what the number is exactly, but 8 or so people were actually charged. Many more, I want to say probably in the 20 or 30 range, were investigated by police. So this is absolutely false. And I don't know how she has the balls to say something like this or convey this messaging. But it's just not, you can't substantiate this with what she heard. She knew that this was a lie, and she's here only to support pedophiles. That's what she's here to do. Gallagher, the filmmaker, one of these supposed filmmakers, the producer of this documentary, says that some of the men took their own lives and that they were essentially collateral damage. This comes from interviews outside of the film. Now, this has been partially addressed in another video on this channel. If you're interested in learning the truth, you hear an interview with Gallagher and his producer wife, Principe, or whatever her name is, Cornelia. And they do an interview on a podcast, and they basically blame me for the deaths of some predators. Some predators that were caught for Creeper Hunter. Definitely false, definitely not supported by any kinds of findings. There was never a coroner that suggested that I was responsible for murder. And yet they have one of the brothers of one of these predators in the film basically saying I should be held responsible for murder. They allowed this in the film, knowing what this person, this brother, Chris Droulard of the Predator, Brad Droulard, his messages are here in the background. These are all evidence in a court in a court document now. And they are suggesting that it was just collateral damage, that what my actions were the causation for people's suicides and or people's drug overdoses, which is, related to number one, which is I got it right once in a while, but there were innocent men swept up. Their lives were essentially changed forever. So those are the four top lies. The main thing about the deaths of other individuals, they're blaming me for the deaths of other individuals. And this has been also addressed in another video on this channel. But in the documentary, they have the gall to suggest that there was this autistic man, Brad Droulard. And here is his Plenty of Fish profile from 2000 and I want to say this is 2014, 2015. So this is Brad Droulard here. This is the brother who appears in this movie Shamed. This is he's a 23-year-old man. And his brother in the film says that he was autistic and all this stuff. He recently graduated. So he was a college graduate, also studying at university, also working in a factory. And then he found time to strike up a conversation right on Plenty of Fish. These messages are from Plenty of Fish. And this is a child's images were used for these pictures, as they were for pretty much all Creeper Hunter decoys. This was an adult woman who donated her pictures as a teenager to this project. This is Plenty of Fish telling him on Plenty of Fish, you don't mind that I'm 15, right? And in the next vein, he's basically asking if he wants to text. And then he gives his phone number. This is this college graduate who's supposedly an autistic person, but they're using autism as like a scapegoat here. They're suggesting that because he was autistic, he didn't know right and wrong. That's what they're essentially suggesting in this film. And nothing could be further from the truth. While I admit that there isn't anything overtly sexual with Brad Droulard in the text messages, there is the inference of sexual. And that's likely why he wasn't charged when the report was made to the police. That was likely why. Does that still mean that he didn't do anything wrong, or that he was, quote unquote, caught up, that he was collateral damage, or that he was swept up but innocent? He was not innocent by any means. He was saying to this child that he was watching Netflix and laying in bed. Oh, I want to be watching Netflix, the child says. And then he's saying, oh, too bad you aren't here then to lay in bed with a 15-year-old child, him as a 23-year-old man. And then he went to meet up with this. He pressured the child, the 15-year-old, he pressured the child to meet less than 2 hours later. Less than 2 hours later, he's there at a McDonald's because he pressured the child to meet up. He didn't go, as he says, as his brother says in the film, his brother says he went to go for ice cream with a child. Does that make it any better? No. But the conversation is clear. These are all exhibits from a court matter where his brother is going to be sued. But they won't put that in the documentary. They won't put that in the documentary because it doesn't suit their purpose. They won't drive it home that Brad Droulard was a drug dealer. I have a police report saying that he died of carfentanil and cocaine and other stuff in his system. 4 years after I talked to him. So why should I be held responsible for murder? Tell me that. Why would the filmmakers make a film where they put that on a pedestal while they are suggesting that there was innocent men swept up? There was not one innocent man that was ever swept up. Not one. They cannot point you to any innocent man on the former Creeper Hunter TV website. They can't do that. And here is Brad Droulard's brother giving a police report a year after his death. This is essentially the game that they wanted to play about Brad Droulard, painting him as this autistic man that didn't know right from wrong. This is from a police interview. I transcribed this. So this is Brad Droulard's brother, Chris, giving a police interview in 2020, looking to have me charged for murder. This is future Jason talking to you while I'm editing this video. And Chris Droulard, I forget to mention, was one of the complainants in the London, Ontario case in October 2025 when I was arrested. He was a complainant trying to get me arrested for harassment, and he was successful in doing this. This is the same person in the documentary, and he is now held responsible for me spending more than 20 days in police custody. And that case was dropped suddenly. So the charge is completely withdrawn. But Chris Droulard was behind that. Brad Droulard's brother, Chris, giving a police interview in 2020, looking to have me charged for murder. A 2-hour interview. He was essentially laughed out of the police station. And the question was, this is from the police officer. You may not know the answer to this, but was Bradley ever diagnosed, referring to autism, at a young age? And then we have all the assessments from his birth. We have all of them. But before that, he said, Chris Droulard says, people with autism are always autistic. He just never received his diagnosis. He was never diagnosed as being autistic. Another fucking lie that permeates throughout this despicable piece of garbage of a film. The only intent of this film is to harm me. That's the only intent. It is not to have you feel sorry for pedophiles. Although that's how it's painted. They want you to feel sorry for autistic Brad Droulard. But I'm sorry, he was never diagnosed as being autistic. And not only that, he was a fully capable person who went to a highly technical program, graduated with flying colors, was holding a job at a factory, and that he's pretty mature too. But he's 23. And he died when he was 27, I presume. He was a drug dealer. He took that college program and sold drugs to people to harm people. But was he ever prosecuted? Nope, not at all. But there was text messages on his phone from the night of his death. There was text messages on his phone that suggest he was going to a drug deal later that night. He never intended to harm himself with drugs. He was only intending to go and meet up and do a drug deal later that night. That all comes from the police and their investigation and the coroner's report. But in this film, they won't tell you about all that, unfortunately. And that's why I will be successful in suing these people, all of them.